Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Squad TV. We love to take a deep dive into all things gaming, and today we're tackling a character. Let's just say he's made a splash.
He's definitely soaked the community in controversy. Some love him, some hate him.
And we're diving into all of it. Jeff the Landshark from Marvel Rivals. He's got guides and tier lists and even rage posts dedicated to his chaotic existence.
Yeah, he's notorious, but we're going to go beyond those memes and those highlight reels.
Exactly. We're going to break down what makes Jeff tick. Why is he so feared, so loved? Why does his ultimate ability spark joy in some players and just pure rage in others?
Stick with us, folks, because by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand the slippery little shark way better.
All right, let's jump right in. So Jeff is classified as a strategist, which means he's a support class. But something about his stats has always kind of thrown me off.
Yeah, you're picking up on it too. His base health is only 2 and 50.
Wait, 250? That's crazy low even for some of the duelists. That's got to be a nightmare in team fights. Isn't the point of a support to kind of stay alive and keep the team going?
And that's what's so unique about Jeff. He's not your typical backline healer. He survives not by tanking hits, but by being incredibly fast and disruptive. His base movement speed is 6 meters per second.
Okay, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
So how does this actually play out in his abilities? His basic attack is Joyful Splash, right? Just kind of like a stream of healing water.
Yeah, deceptively simple attack. Very effective for that sustained healing. But you don't want to underestimate his Aqua Burst. This water spit, it packs a surprising punch, especially with its area of effect explosion, and there's no damage drop-off.
Hold on. Are you saying that this little guy can hold his own in a fight? I always pictured him hiding behind the tank, just hoping not to get stepped on.
He's not going to be carrying the damage charts or anything, but he can handle himself, and that's before we even get to the ability that makes Jeff so infamous.
You're talking about hide and seek, right? Where he just turns into this little shark torpedo.
Exactly. This is key to Jeff's playstyle and why he's so slippery. Smaller hitbox self-healing at 35 health per second and a movement speed boost to a whopping 9.6 meters per second.
9.6. That's going to be faster than most duelists.
Huh.
No wonder he's such a pain to pin down.
Okay.
Okay, what else does Jeff have up his sleeve?
We've got Healing Bubble, which is way more than just a heal. We're talking strategic depth burst healing buff that stacks with Joyful Splash and a movement speed boost on pickup.
So clutch escapes.
Yeah.
I bet that's where the love-hate relationship with Jeff really comes in.
Yeah.
I can just picture some of those escapes.
All depends on what side of that bubble you're on.
Okay.
And then we've got his passive ability. Oblivious Cuteness, crit damage reduction makes sense. He's a small target.
All right, we've danced around it long enough.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the main attraction, the source of countless highlight reels and rage quits. It's Jeff, his ultimate ability.
Yeah, things get interesting here. Jeff dives down and then, well, he can swallow enemies
Okay.
and allies.
Swallowing allies. Doesn't that sound a little counterproductive for a support character? I mean, it's hilarious, but strategically, I'm not so sure.
It might seem like trolling, but think about the possibilities. The swallowed ally gets healed. Enemies take damage while they're inside Jeff.
And then there's the repositioning, that dreaded pitfall tactic. Explain that to our viewers. What makes this move so infamous?
Picture this. You're pushing the objective, feeling confident. Suddenly, the ground vanishes beneath you. You're falling, and just before you hit the bottom, you see Jeff's fin disappearing back underground. Pure Jeff.
Ouch, I can feel the frustration from here. But there is kind of a dark humor to it, right? It's almost forgivable because it's so ridiculous.
Almost. The real skill comes in knowing when to use it. A poorly timed swallow can totally backfire, but a well-placed chomp can completely turn the tide of a fight.
Strategic trolling. I like it. Now, before we move on, any thoughts on Jeff's team-up abilities? We know he's got some interesting ones.
Yeah, he does. Frozen Spitball with Luna Snow is straightforward, basically just a healing boost. But Old Friends with Groot, that's where things get fun.
Jeff riding on top of Groot. That's got to be both adorable and strategically interesting. Extra mobility for Groot, damage reduction for Jeff.
Exactly. It's a match made in some kind of bizarre lab accident, but it works.
All right, folks, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive on Jeff the Landshark. We've covered his stats, his abilities, and the general mayhem that comes with his playstyle. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive into some specific strategies and tips for playing as and against this slippery little shark.
We'll even uncover the secrets to mastering, it's Jeff, and how to avoid becoming another victim of his chaotic antics.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's get tactical. What are some common strategies that you see really successful Jeff players use?
What's fascinating about Jeff is that you can play him both aggressively and defensively.
Okay.
It all comes down to reading the situation, really using that unique kit to its fullest potential.
Can you give our viewers an example? Like, say for someone who's thinking about adding Jeff to their roster.
Okay, so imagine you're on defense protecting the payload. A smart Jeff player will strategically place healing bubbles around choke points.
Oh, giving their allies quick health and speed boosts when the enemy pushes.
So it's almost like setting traps, but with healing benefits. That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
Okay, what about when you're on offense? Jeff's gotta be more than just a walking bubble dispenser, right?
Absolutely. This is where his high movement speed and disruptive ultimate really shine. Jeff can actually scout ahead, darting in and out to check enemy positions and relay that info back to his team.
So, a little bit of a spiral. I like it. But how does he survive those scouting missions with such low health? I mean, I'd be terrified of getting caught out there.
Remember hide and seek. That's not just for escaping.
Right.
It's also for flanking and creating distractions.
Oh.
Jeff can pop up behind enemy lines, unleash a few aqua bursts, and vanish before they even realize what hit them.
Now, that's the chaotic Jeff we all know and, well, some of us love. But let's talk about his ultimate. We've seen those amazing pitfall highlights. But what are some other, strategic ways to use it? It's Jeff.
The pitfall tactic is definitely satisfying, but it's very situational.
Yeah, skilled Jeff players will also use it for things like peeling.
Peeling?
Yeah, so imagine your ally is getting focused down. Jeff can swallow them, give them a moment to breathe and heal, and then spit them back out to safety.
Oh, I never thought of using it that way. That's brilliant. I've mostly seen it used for those hilarious environmental kills.
It's subtle but very effective. And don't forget the psychological impact of it's Jeff. The mere threat of getting chomped can make enemies hesitant to push,
Yeah.
and that can give your team a positional advantage.
Fear is a powerful weapon, especially when it's wielded by a giant, adorable shark. Okay, so we've talked about strategic uses. Any tips for our viewers on how to counter this chaos? What do you do if you're up against a Jeff?
Awareness is key.
Okay.
Always be keeping an eye on that fin. If you see Jeff diving down, be extra cautious,
Oh, yeah.
especially around those map hazards.
Right, because once you're falling, there's no escaping that chomp. Anything else?
Characters with movement abilities like dashes or teleports or even flight can be really effective at dodging that ultimate. If you know Jeff's coming for you, get out of range fast.
So mobility is key. Any specific characters that you would recommend against Jeff?
You know, Iron Man with his repulsor blasts and his flight can be a real nuisance for Jeff.
Makes sense.
Black Panther with his speed and dash is another good choice. Basically anyone who can kind of outmaneuver and outdamage Jeff's close-range attacks.
That makes sense. But what about those times when you just can't escape the chomp? Any hope for survival?
If you find yourself swallowed, don't panic.
Wait, really? I always thought getting swallowed meant certain doom.
Not necessarily. Some characters actually have abilities that can activate even while they're swallowed. Scarlet Witch, for example, she can use her mystic projection to escape Jeff's belly and return to safety.
Oh, right. She basically turns into a ghost, so
Yeah.
physical limitations don't apply to her.
Mhm.
Are there any other escape artists we should know about?
Doctor Strange can use his cloak of levitation to ascend out of danger even while he's being held captive.
Oh, nice.
And Groot. Well, Groot's just too big to be fully swallowed.
So even in the belly of the beast, there's still a glimmer of hope. I love that. Okay, we've covered counters to his ultimate fit, but what about dealing with Jeff in general? Just throughout the match.
Team communication is huge. You gotta be calling out Jeff's movements. Let your teammates know when he's flanking or setting up for his ultimate focus fire can bring him down quickly, especially with that low health.
Right. Teamwork makes the dream work, even when dealing with a chaotic shark puppy thing.
Exactly. And a well-placed stun or snare can leave Jeff vulnerable despite his speed boosts. Don't underestimate the power of coordinated attacks.
This has been so helpful. I feel way more prepared to face Jeff in my next match. But before we wrap up this part, can we go a little bit deeper into his team-up abilities? We touched on them briefly earlier.
Yeah, of course, Frozen Spitball with Luna Snow. It's useful, but it's not a game changer.
Right.
It's mainly a healing boost. However, Old Defends with Groot. Now that's something special.
Let's break down this dynamic duo. What makes them so effective?
Picture Groot with his massive health pool.
Okay.
Now imagine him with Jeff perched on top, constantly healing him and providing occasional clutch escapes with Jeff. It's Jeff. He becomes an even more formidable tank.
So they perfectly cover each other's weaknesses. Groot protects Jeff from getting squashed. Jeff keeps Groot in tip-top shape.
Yeah.
It's like a match made in, well, somewhere very strange.
Indeed. This unlikely duo can be a real force to be reckoned with, especially on defense.
All right, everyone, that wraps up part 2 of our Jeff the Landshark deep dive. We've covered strategies, counters, and even a little relationship advice for our favorite Shark Tree power couple.
In part 3, we'll look at the bigger picture. How does Jeff fit into the overall meta of Marvel Rivals? What does his existence tell us about the game's design philosophy? And maybe, just maybe, we'll ponder what a land shark dreams about.
Okay, maybe we'll skip that last one, but the rest sounds fascinating. Don't miss it. All right, welcome back to the final part of our Jeff the Landshark deep dive. We've covered his abilities, his strategies, the chaos he brings to the game. But now let's kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you know?
It's time to talk meta.
Yes.
Design philosophy, Jeff's overall impact on Marvel Rivals.
You know, I've always seen Jeff as like a fun, chaotic pick,
Yeah.
you know? But I wouldn't have guessed that he'd have a significant impact on the competitive scene. Was I wrong?
You might be surprised to hear this, but Jeff has actually shaken things up quite a
Yeah.
bit. His unique kit has really forced players to rethink those traditional strategies.
Really? Tell me more. How has this little land shark, changed the game?
Well, take his ultimate, for example. It's Jeff. The threat of getting chomped and repositioned, especially around those map hazards, has made map awareness so much more important than ever.
So Jeff accidentally made the game more strategic. That's kind of amazing.
He's a perfect example of how a single character can shift the entire landscape of a game. It's fascinating, isn't it? And this kind of leads us to the design philosophy behind Jeff.
Let's talk about that. What were the developers thinking when they unleashed this chaotic shark upon the world? Well, what was their goal?
Well, based on, developer interviews and patch notes, it seems like they wanted to create a support character who is anything but passive, someone who could disrupt, create those unexpected plays, and, inject a little humor into the game.
They definitely succeeded on all fronts. Jeff is like a force of nature, a tiny whirlwind of chaos and splashes. He is definitely not your average healer.
Exactly. And I think this really reflects a larger trend that we're seeing in competitive games, this move away from those rigid roles and towards these more flexible hybrid characters.
That's a really interesting point. Are you saying Jeff is like a pioneer of the support disruptor archetype?
You could say that he's paved the way for other characters who really blur the lines between those traditional roles, and it's a trend that keeps things fresh and keeps players on their toes.
I love that. It's so important for games to evolve and keep things exciting. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Any final thoughts for our viewers on Jeff the Landshark?
We've analyzed his abilities, his strategies, his impact on the game. But here's a question for all of you watching. What do you think of Jeff? Do you love him, hate him, or maybe a bit of both? Let us know in the comments.
He's definitely a polarizing character, that's for sure. But I think we can all agree, he's a reminder that even in a competitive game, there's room for fun, unexpected plays, and a little bit of land shark shenanigans.
Well said. And who knows, maybe there's a little bit of Jeff in all of us.
I'm not sure I'm ready to admit that just yet. But thanks for taking us on this epic Jeff journey. We've learned so much about this tiny terror, and hopefully you have too.
It's been my pleasure. Until next time, keep those fins sharp and those chomps ready.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of Jeff the Landshark. We'll see you next time on Game Squad TV.